I'm going to start tonight with calling the roll, please.
Commissioner Oliver,
Present.
Commissioner Davidson,
Here.
Commissioner Boyd,
Here.
Commissioner McMurray,
Here.
Commissioner Gooch,
Here.
Commissioner Dodd, Vice Chair Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes from our meeting last month. I believe everybody has that in SharePoint. Hope you've had time to review it. If so, we'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Oliver, and second from Commissioner McMurray. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Do we have any public comments signed up for this evening? We do not. Okay. Next is our Health Department report from Director Cumby.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Byron Cumby, Director of your Rutherford County Health Department. Hopefully you have our community outreach report made available to you there on your iPad, and you'll see in our first column, in keeping with our mission to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of the people in Tennessee, we protect with our disease intervention efforts, our immunizations, and environmental health. Second column, promote with our health outreach, diabetes outreach, community participation, and our vital records administration. And finally, last column, to improve, we include our primary care services, our WIC, family planning, and our dental services. All of these programs are on track and progressing nicely. We see no areas of concern. Despite some, on the COVID front, despite some reported increases nationwide and in Tennessee, the CDC's hospital admission metric in Rutherford County remains low. Low is considered less than 10 admissions per 100,000 of population, and that we are definitely well below that, and hovering somewhere around 1 or 2. We have had an increase in positivity reported in testing, but the first part of August did show an increase. That has already showed a slight downward trend in week 2 of August, down from 35.9 per 100,000 to 13.5 per 100,000. So we're encouraged by that. In an effort to address COVID concerns, the Tennessee Department of Health does have a community support hotline, and we wanted to make that aware to you. That phone number is 615-770-6940. It's open between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central. They also have an email address at covid19.info@tn.gov, and that's to address any COVID concerns. At the Rutherford County Health Departments, we do still offer free testing from 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. Vaccines and boosters are free between 8 and 10 or 1 and 3 Monday through Friday. No appointment needed for that. We do anticipate an announcement in the next couple of weeks, release dates for the fall COVID booster, contingent on FDA approval and then approval by the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. This will probably happen the first half of September, and we will likely have an availability date for you at the time of our next meeting. Seasonal flu shots will also be available soon through various outlets, including your health departments. The Tennessee Department of Health annual statewide Fight Flu campaign is currently slated for the first week of November, and we will update you as soon as that specific date is set. And finally, we were pleased to participate in a flag-raising event at the Rutherford County's new Public Health and Safety Building in Rockvale. Saw many of you there. This past Sunday, the 27th, an impressive facility, indeed an opportunity to interface emergency services and public health directly with community and to establish outposts apart from those available downtown. And it's the result, no doubt, of a lot of hard work from our previous and current county mayor, commissioners, constitutional officers, department directors, and we do join in expressing our gratitude. That concludes our report.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Director Cumby? Chairman Phillips.
Thank you. Mr. Cumby, if you would, booster shots for COVID, October is a good time for the boosters, and also a good time for the flu shots. Can they be given at the same time?
That's an excellent question. Yes, they can be given at the same time. That's something we've already been doing, but look for a push for that in the fall to where they say, perhaps a one-stop, and so you can get all your boosters. There's even a vaccine now for the RSV, and all indicators show that it is a safe practice to receive those at the same time.
So October is probably the time when we're getting into the fall season that both of those would probably, especially the boosters and the flu shot. Is that right?
Correct, yes. October would be a prime time to do that. Look for flu shots to become available very soon, and then, as I said, probably mid to late September is when they'll give us an exact date on that COVID-19 booster. Thank you.
Commissioner Oliver.
Is there any indication of what the flu season is going to look like yet?
I haven't seen any outright predictions. Typically, they will look at what's going on the other side of the planet. I'd be glad to check on that and see what we can anticipate, what the experts say, if it's going to look to be severe or kind of hold steady. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Director Cumby, when it comes to getting the boosters and vaccines, we want pretty much everyone to try to get those, but is there a specific group that they focus on, like the elderly and then those with the compromised immune systems and things like that?
Yes, sir. Commissioner McMurray, you hit right on it. We've all heard this, but basically it can benefit nearly anyone, but specifically the immunocompromised. Those of advanced age or even just over the age of 60 seem to benefit the most from that, and that will protect against severe illness from the virus. So.
Perfect, thank you. And a couple more quick questions. I know Metro has had a spike in fatal overdoses and things like that. Is that something that your office tracks in regards to overdoses within our county? Have we seen a spike in that? Just because I know some counties around us have.
We don't track that specifically at our office, but we do work with the opioid overdose task force. We know there is some opioid education funding going on as well as the county. They've done some fantastic things. So we do track those. Tennessee Department of Health does track that, but our county office not specifically, although given by what I've seen on the task force on the opioid overdoses, the heat map does show certain activity in some of our cities. So it's definitely a concern that we need to look at.
Thank you. And then one last question. Sorry, have all these questions tonight.
You're fine. Thank you.
In regards to I know the West Nile was detected in some mosquitoes in Davidson County. Have we seen something of that nature here in Rutherford County, or that has shifted towards our way? Because I want to make sure we're always trying to stay on top of things. So.
Right. I was aware of some mosquitoes detected as close as Antioch. That's primarily was done by the Metro Davidson Health Department. So that is right in our back door. So one can safely assume that those mosquitoes may be out and about. So, would want to practice precautions there as far as exposure to that as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Just one follow-up. That opioid committee meeting, their next meeting is scheduled for the 13th of September. It's a 9 a.m. meeting. A lot of really, really good information on there. Director Cumby is part of that process and is intimately involved in that. But it's a lot of good information. I believe it's televised and or replayed. So if you can't make that meeting, you can kind of tune in and pull that up, I think, on RCTV.
Any other questions? Commissioner McMurray?
If not, I'll make a motion to approve the report.
The motion to approve the report. Do we have a second? And a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Excellent. I did have one thing I wanted to bring up. It was very effective last year. You sent us a graphic that we could all put on our social media when there was a significant event like a flu shot day or when shots were starting or like periods. As many of those as you can get to our email boxes for commissioners to help us, it's a lot easier for everybody to put that on their social media and forward, and that was great. I know you and I talk about just the awareness of the great things that the health department are doing for the people of Rutherford County, so the more we can help get that word out, we'd certainly love to do so.
Noted. It would be our pleasure to do that, and I echo those sentiments. The awareness is the important part. There's all kinds of resources out there. It's making people aware of how to access those.
Excellent. I think the next thing, I believe you're bringing a grant contract before us tonight.
Yes, thank you. So what I have is the annual government grant contract. This is the agreement between the state of Tennessee and Rutherford County. This is that pass-through grant funding that essentially funds the salaries for our personnel at the health department. Not entirely. We do have some, out of say 83 employees, we have 10 that are pure county employees where their salaries and benefits are funded by the county. We do have roughly 26 state employees that their salary and benefits funded directly by the state. This is the direct government assistance pass-through funding where the county does pay the salary and benefits for these folks, but these positions, but then they are reimbursed by the state of Tennessee. So apologies for the short notice on this one. We do try to get these before you as soon as they become available. You'll notice on the begin date, July 1st, 2023. So these funds are already being accessed or already in effect. If you want to scan down, hopefully you have these available to you. Around page 19 and 20, you'll see two tables. One showing the grant budget itemized, the second showing the line items of the personnel covered by this funding. So again, this is an annual agreement that we enter into. It is sometimes amended, such as last year when we had the raises approved by the county. And so the first step in the process, so the county can start submitting invoices for repayment, is to go ahead and get this approved by committee.
And Director Cumby, your office has reviewed this grant contract, and you believe everything is in order?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir,
And
we have.
the other question that comes up a lot, this is completely grant money, there's no matching funds, this is just receipts on that?
That is
Okay.
correct. No matching funds.
Does anyone have any questions for the director?
Mr. Chair, we see these grants all the time. It's in order. My motion is to approve the grant.
We have a motion to
Contract.
approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Oliver. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? What's that? Carly, we'll do a roll call since it is money on that. So call the roll, please.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Cumby, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Could I
Chairman.
ask just one quick follow-up question? Is this the same amount we got last year, or is it a little more?
I believe this has been adjusted perhaps upward. I'd have to
Okay, thanks.
do a comparison for sure, but yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, next item is the community care report. I believe everybody has seen the CCRC minutes. It's uploaded to SharePoint. No one's here from the mayor's office with any further report on that, so you have that to review, and we'll move on to number 5, which is the special projects report from Michael Smith.
Good evening. You do not have a special projects report on your iPad tonight, I don't believe. We are currently working on finalizing everything. The auditors are here. We have a kind of a draft, but as we move projects around and issue bonds, I will have you one. I have not forgot about trying to get you one, but those projects are moving constantly. Right now, it looks like we still have no money for some of them, even though they're approved. So we're working through all of that. And the way we report our bond anticipation note that we have out now that's in Fund 189, which is the special projects report, we're working through the accounting-wise on that with the auditors. Actually, today we had a meeting this afternoon with them about that. And so hopefully all of that will be resolved next month, because I want to give a little bit, this ties into the special projects report. Our bond issue timeline, which is mainly for the schools, is kind of what I wanted to touch on of why we're still, that report is in draft format. So actually tomorrow and Thursday is our scheduled bond rating calls. Like I said, the majority, the $154 million of that is for the schools, the 3 high school additions. And so we anticipate our bond sale being on September 27th or 28th at the end of the month. And so hopefully we will close on the bond sometime the first week of October. And so when we do that, we will then have the bond proceeds pay back our bond anticipation note. We'll be able to fully fund on the accounting side all of the projects that are in that Fund 189, being Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna. But that's kind of the timeline draft of where we're at now. If there's a question about any project on there, I'd be glad to answer that tonight. But we haven't added any new projects for the school system to that Fund 189. Nothing has been added since our last actual report given to you, I believe was probably in May or June. But that's a little bit of our timeline schedule for the bonds. I want to touch on one other thing that I think Dr. Sullivan has probably may touch on tonight or next month, but we have been in talks with the school system. It's trying to really get ahead of planning for a new elementary school. I don't want to jump out in front of Dr. Sullivan here, but that will also coincide with all of this. I'll have a little more information based on our bond rating call tomorrow. We're going to mention that to them, but we are in talks about that, so that will also need to be added to the special projects report. And so that's kind of why there's a lot of moving pieces right now. Questions?
Questions for Michael Smith? No questions. Michael, this might be a first.
Thank y'all.
Motion to approve that report?
Make a motion to approve.
Approve the report. Do I have a second? Second. And a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Michael Smith. Dr. Jimmy Sullivan will be coming next, and we've got several things we're going to be discussing tonight with the school board report. We're going to start with a enrollment and demographics update.
Good evening, everyone. Jimmy Sullivan, Rutherford County Director of Schools. So several things to kind of talk about first. So we have officially, I guess we're finishing our 3rd full week of school. So it goes quicker than anybody I think would ever want to realize, but we have enrolled a whole lot more students, as is normally the case for us. You have an enrollment comparison report. This does not include pre-K. So these are strictly kindergarten through 12th grade students. A couple things I wanted to highlight. You have 2 pieces of paper, one of them from 2022, showing our enrollment for August of 2022 of 49,997. Those other numbers, this is just the way I can pull it, shows how many kids were absent for the day. So we had 1,639 kids absent last year on this day for 3%. But then the other one that is on the front and back in a little bit bigger font is today's enrollment report. You will see today's enrollment is 50,802. So I know that is a little bit scary to think that is good news, but the good news is we only grew 800 kids from last August to this August. And for where we were the year before, it was over 2,200. 800 is still good from where we were, but that is still pretty much a full elementary school of kids that we have grown from August to August. From April to August, we've grown about 400, so it's right about in half. A couple schools I wanted to point out. One, if you look on the 2022 form, Holloway High School and Pittard Campus School are switched. I have no idea how that happened, but Pittard should be the 242 from last year and Holloway should be the 122. So those somehow in my sorting got mixed up. But a couple schools I wanted to point out that had quite a bit of growth continued. Blackman Middle School, sitting at 1,650. Cedar Grove Elementary went from 783 to 840. Christiana Middle School, 1,039 to 1,097. Laverne High School, 2067 to 2147. Oakland Middle went from 1115 to 1154. Plainview, 495 to 595, so a big jump there. And then just a couple other ones. Riverdale High School, we expected to jump because of rezoning, so Riverdale went from 2,066 to 2,188. Rock Springs Middle School went from, trying to find where Rock Springs Middle School went on here, 1,042 to 1,093. A big jump we also had was Rockville Middle School. So Rockville Middle School went from 1,383 to 1,507. So part of that is our sister school system is Murfreesboro City is somewhat limiting the number of sixth grade classrooms that they have. And so we have sixth grade, so we're picking up more of their sixth grade students. Not necessarily in that area, but in some other areas. And then the ones we hear a whole lot about right now are the Stewart's Creek campus. So Stewart's Creek Elementary last year was at 1,248. This year's at 1,320. Stewart's Creek High is 2,413, and now they're at 2,464. But overall, just over 800 student enrollment jump. Couple things I did want to talk about enrollment-wise. We've talked about it in health and ed before, and in budget as well. How are we guaranteeing that all of our students are actually our students? So we did a very hard push this last month to make sure that students were either showing 2 proofs of residence, affidavits, Atlas, or had another parenting plan or some reason to show that they truly were attending Rutherford County or that they lived in Rutherford County. Because we know we had some people that were moving here or living here and probably were attending our schools that didn't. That was a huge focus pre-COVID. It's been in our district for at least over a decade. We went back to that. So I would imagine that's some of why our enrollment has dropped. I say dropped. Not increased 12 or 1,400 kids, only 800. And so we did see quite a bit of decrease from that. So everybody has been verified. We have probably less than a dozen or so out there that we are still trying to work through. And if they don't have it by Friday, we're dropping them from our rolls. So any questions on just kind of that overall enrollment? And then I'll get into some specifics of where we are percentage-wise.
Question.
Oliver?
These schools that you pointed out that are, of course, already overcrowded, what is the capacity? For example, you pointed out Stewart's Creek High School at 2,464. What's the capacity? Is it a 2,000 capacity we can assume?
But over 2,000, I can pull up our last health and ed report or last zoning group and pull up that exact capacity, somewhere between 2,200 and 2,300.
And then what's the standard capacity for the middle schools?
Middle schools are 1,200.
1,200.
Yep.
And then elementary?
Elementary 1,000. Yep. That is part of what we worked with that RSP group last time and still finalizing our numbers of capacity. But it's between elementaries between 1,000 and 1,100 on that design.
Dr. Sullivan, when is the next part that we're going to hear? I believe we've
Yes.
heard, I think, the second part or second phase, and the next is the third, right?
Yep. So I'll skip around a little bit to answer that. So actually, can I go through free and reduced lunch and then I'll come back to that?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Next thing I want to hit on with enrollment was just an idea of where free and reduced lunch percentage. So these are direct serve students who receive some type of government assistance and parents who sign up for free and reduced lunch. Last year's numbers were 43.2%. That is higher than we have been. So we are noticing a bigger gap between our students that have and some of our students that don't have, and so that is an increased percentage over about 5% during the kind of high points of COVID. So yeah, 43.2% is our free and reduced lunch percentage. That was last school year. We haven't, we had the first 20 days before all forms have to be back in again. So this is what we ended last year with. 43.2%. Up from 37%, I believe. If you go on the state report card, you'll see we're around 37% the year before. The other part of that is Atlas students. So if you hear us talk about Atlas, that is how we serve our homeless students, and that is under the Federal McKinney-Vento Act. We just had a report, so it's one good thing about things being televised. I went back there to make sure my numbers were accurate from last Thursday's school board meeting. So we had 625 Atlas students as of last week already. To put it in comparison, we finished last year at 1,637, but at this point last year, we were only at 402. So we're over 30% over for our Atlas students of where we were last year. To be Atlas, you don't just have to be homeless, as we would consider homeless, to where you truly don't. You can be doubled up in a house, living in a hotel. And so as we push some of that enrollment verification, I imagine we had some more students qualify under that as well. So that number is well on track to be above the 1,600 that we ended the year with last year. So that gets us to the second section, which is our Board of Education updates, if you're over that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm still trying to digest a 5% jump in the previous year on free and reduced lunch. That's tracking upward where we could seemingly expect more this year, and the same with the Atlas program. So it's things I think we should be talking about more often, because that number is nearing 50% if it continues to grow there. And we need to make sure we're continuing conversations about what the community can do to get involved to help with that program. I know especially with Atlas, because I think taking clothing and donations are a big part of that. So thank you for sharing it. I think we should continue. That's one of our major concerns moving forward.
I'll tell you something that is hard to realize is that we actually as a district are one of the 20 wealthiest districts. And so when you think about this across the state of Tennessee, we're in better shape than a lot of places are. All right, so next we do our Board of Education updates. So certified positions, so we had roughly 40 vacancies last week. I think it was 45 certified vacancies and 86 classified vacancies. We had over 100 at this time last year. We've been able to make a huge dent, largely because of, one, we're trying to continually move culture, change working conditions, all those different types of things, in partnership with our parents, schools, and community. And then the other portion of appreciate our school board and county commission approving our raises and our salary structure. I mean, that helped us attract people from other districts that we were losing. And so most of our positions are in special education. English is a second language. And then we have quite a few upper elementary, 4th and 5th grade openings. We are able to cover those with interventionists being able to go into the elementary school classroom because they're a certified elementary teacher. For special education, what we try to do is we try to either increase caseload, because there is no requirement on caseload of what that maximum is of how many students can be there. And the other portion, if we have the flexibilities, we offer an extended contract for somebody to pick up more students. There's not a lot of relief for special education. Just because you cannot get a waiver, you truly have to have a special education license. The other part of that is classified. We have quite a few special education EAs, and then we are still struggling with custodians. Much better shape than we were this time last year, but custodians is still a pretty high number for us. So to have about 120 openings, I know that seems like a lot, but we're over 6,000 employees, and so less than 2.5%. So overall, we're doing very well. Other parts, and this is a celebration, of course. We did the groundbreaking, so thank you to our county commission for our 3 high school additions for Smyrna, Riverdale, and Oakland. And that gets us into the zoning portion that we're looking at. So I know Mr. Smith mentioned kind of the Beatty property portion, where we are moving now with our zoning. So at our last Health and Ed in July, we went over enrollment, we went over capacity. Now we're getting to the zoning conversation, the real fun stuff. So we are going to have a media release on September 7th. We are inviting all members of the local media to come so we can talk about our growth, why we need to rezone, all those different factors. September 7th. And then we are hosting 3 informational sessions with our community. So September 18th, September 19th, and September 20th. 18th at Stewart's Creek High School, 19th at Siegel High School, and then the 20th, I believe, at our central office. I may have those locations mixed up, but it's the 18th, 19th, and 20th, to where we will have just some very specific zoning proposals, and then the community will have an option to be able to give us feedback on those. So a couple things that we are looking at with those zoning proposals is making sure that we can use the additions and fill those up. Also looking at some of our older buildings. I know one that we talk about quite a bit is we have on the north end, we have Roy Waldron Annex, Roy Waldron Main Building, Laverne Lake, and then John Coleman. John Coleman, as you'll see, has a capacity for about 1,000, but only 500 students there. So we are actually looking at taking Roy Waldron Annex offline and using Roy Waldron main building just as one campus. And so I know it's something we've kind of talked about on the north end a little bit and shifting some of that enrollment over. Other things you're going to hear us talk about is that after those meetings, the public input meetings, we will then have about a month to where the consultant and our team will go through and take comments and then hopefully be able to pass a rezone plan for probably the 25-26 school year, not the 24-25 school year. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we realize Stewart's Creek Elementary School, and going with the rest of these, is one of our most overcrowded areas. Our board is trying something new. We actually last week voted to cap enrollment at Stewart's Creek Elementary. So after September 29th, no new students that move into the Stewart's Creek zone will attend Stewart's Creek Elementary. Instead, we will bus them to Stewartsboro Elementary, because Stewartsboro is also a high-performing school, level 5 school, so instead of going to Stewart's Creek, they will go to Stewartsboro. They will stay at Stewartsboro with any new parents or students that move into that zone until the new elementary school opens. So I realize I wanted to share that with you all because that's going to definitely get some public input and some public comment, I am sure. People are moving into the area thinking they're going to attend a school, and instead we're going to provide them transportation to go to another school. That will not impact next year's kindergartners. So if it is a kindergartner that's enrolling like normal, we have a 5th grade class that's moving to the middle school, so we'll have room for kindergartners. But if it's a split household, unless they already have an older student there, then they will be going to Stewartsboro Elementary. So any questions on that part? Because I know that's a unique.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So how will you go about, this is just me thinking, in regards to the announcement you just made, will you put out some type of release to like realtors and things like that? That way they can include it when they're showing homes, because you will have a lot of ticked off individuals. So, ticked off.
Yep.
Not
I've heard from several of them already.
Tick off.
I've heard from several of them already. So luckily, if anybody has a contract before December 31st, they're already in our school for the most part, because we allow them, if they have a contract, to go ahead and enroll in that zone. So it's going to be next semester, and the next year is going to be the biggest problem.
Commissioner Murray, I can assure you that my phone, as early as 7 in the morning the next day, that question was being asked, because you are correct. When you're going to pull up zoning, it's still going to, as far as I know, the zoning will not change from being Stewart's Creek Elementary, because you can't go in and put dots on just the particular people that will be going to Stewartsboro. But so that's a big campaign. I will reach out with MTAR and make sure they put out to that, because you're exactly right, to make sure folks know that after that registration deadline, even though the zoning is going to say Stewart's Creek Elementary, you will be going to Stewartsboro during that time. But very good. That was one of the main concerns we had from folks, because they're in the 10th and 9th district. There are people moving into new homes every day. Every day.
I envision this continuing. I don't think this is going to be the last time we do enrollment capping. We're also looking at Roy Waldron right now for enrollment capping. We are to go to Laverne Lake instead. Black in the Middle, we're looking towards Smyrna Middle. So I envision it's a new approach, but it is a lot better approach to make sure kids are in a building than us continuing just to pile more kids and more kids and more kids into an already overcrowded building.
Commissioner Oliver?
Yes. The cap is just for Stewart's Creek Elementary, is that correct? Just the elementary school?
Elementary, correct. So that gets us kind of to where we are moving. Really the key cog, if you will, for us being able to rezone is the elementary school. Without that elementary school and then the middle school right behind it, our zoning plans fall. And so when we've been working with that vendor in that group, they already are drawing zoning lines for a new elementary and a new middle school on the Beatty property. So that is why we're looking more at probably doing a rezone plan for the entire district during the 25 school year, instead of rezoning kids next year and then rezoning them again the next year. So where does that get us with the Beatty property? So we've met with Michael Smith and several other county people as well and talked to Mayor Carr about it. We are looking at sending it out to bid for for the Beatty property. And it is going to be a 2-story building to try to utilize the most space we can. Despite everybody thinking we're building Taj Mahals, we are still not building a Taj Mahal. It is still the same design we have been building. I guess the first time we built this 2-story one would be John Coleman. We've replicated it at Rocky Fork. As I tell this committee every time, if you see columns, it's not our building. It's the city schools. Not our building, but it has columns. So just, it's a good differentiator, not our building. But that'll go out to bid probably December 15th. With hopes that we can then have bids back so that we can hit the January Health and Ed meeting, the beginning of February budget meeting, and then hopefully approval at the county commission meeting in February. We have about a 1-month window. If something happened with the bid or whatever where we had to push it 1 month, we have about a 1-month window to where we could still open it in time for August of '25. If we miss that February, March window for county commission hopeful approval, then we're going to be in trouble with seats. I don't know a better way to say that. The other part that I wanted to hit on is that we can then make the argument next, do you need a middle school or do you need a high school? It really depends on what land we have available, because both of them are extremely overcrowded, to where we even have started talking about building smaller high schools so that we could fit a smaller footprint. I know that increases administrative cost, but that 3-campus idea for us is just not going to be there anymore. So whether we have to build smaller high schools, and by small, we're looking at 1,500 to 1,600. We're not thinking of a small high school. So still probably top 40 high school enrollment in the state, but that helps us be able to fit it on a bigger footprint or a smaller footprint. So that's all I had on Board of Education updates.
I have a few things on that myself. One, obviously, these dates for the media release are coming up very soon. Is there a graphic or a post or something? A lot of people are going to be interested in this, and I know not only the full commission, but this committee wants to make sure people know that we're telling them about these dates in advance.
Really, we're trying to do September 7th. We'll have a release that we're staying in a media release first, but September 7th is our big day that we're saying this is what we're doing, the rezoning. We've been talking on our Sunday messages to parents for over a year that we're going to be rezoning, but September 7th will be really when it gets pushed. Outside of that, then we've had the dates published already because we're using schools to host 2 of those. That'll be our big media push. We'll start on the 7th.
Could there be an email sent to the commissioners that just bullet point those dates, just to be sure everybody can have it in their mailbox for quick access? I would appreciate that a lot. The other one is I did want to point out a couple of things. You know, there's a willingness here. Obviously, we're talking about a 2-story elementary school. A big point of conversation with our constituents has been, when land is smaller, are we going to consider going up? And we're hearing that a lot, and I think we're already hearing from the very next thing we're looking at that that's something we're determining to do. And I think that's the right direction. I can tell you in District 10, looking at any land plots out there, there is not enough room to build what we have before. So we're going to have to, Chairman Phillips and I had this conversation 1 year ago, we're going to have to be creative, and we can't keep doing things the same way we've always done because we just don't have the land for it. So I'm glad to hear that we're addressing new ideas and ways to take what we have and make the best of it. Does anyone have any more questions on the Board of Education update? Okay. If not, we're going to go ahead and move into our budget amendment.
All right, so next we have our budget amendment, and this is going to seem very familiar because this body, the full budget, and the county commission has already approved this once. This amendment is to fund the purchase of the building and property at 814 South Church Street. This property is listed with Matthews Real Estate Investment Services and been negotiated to be acquired not to exceed $1.2 million. This property will be funded by amending General Purpose Fund, 141 by decreasing 39,000 unassigned fund balance and increasing transfers out account 99,100,590 transfers to other funds in the amount of $1.2 million in $1.2 million. In fiscal year 22-23, a similar amendment was completed for this same purchase, but due to the timing of approval for the purchase of the property, the funds moved back into unassigned fund balance at fiscal year end. This amendment moves the funds out of fund balance and transfers it to the building projects fund again. So, pretty much exact same thing that you have already approved, but because this happened in April and May, the purchase didn't go through before fiscal year ended, so here we are back again asking to amend it one more time. I do want to add, I do envision additional costs. We talked about this last time. We will have to renovate this building. It is not suited for students. So we've estimated like a total cost of somewhere around 2.5. That's what we've talked about the entire time. And then we have some logistic conversations as well about, do we name it a new alternative school, or do we actually connect it to Daniel McKee, one of our current alternative schools? There's pros and cons to both. A pro of connecting it to Daniel McKee was you'd have less administrative costs. You could hire, we already had budgeted an assistant principal for this position in part of our budget from last year. So you just hire an assistant principal that's their location. We already had a school counselor budgeted for this in last year's budget and a school secretary. You could then use teachers from both buildings. Downside, of course, is during an emergency, and we're working with some students who may have some emergencies, you technically don't have a principal that is there. They're going to have to, yes, the AP can fill in, but they're still only the assistant principal. Pros and cons, and our board is looking at kind of those options right now. I don't envision, again, this opening any time before January. So, happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Gooch?
Remind me, is this building 3 levels?
Yes, yes.
And were we all utilizing all 3 levels, or just?
We will. So Mr. Reed, our school board attorney, has done a fabulous job. It is weird for us because we are still going to be collecting leases of a couple groups. So the bottom, the basement, and the first floor will all be empty by December 31st. And so that'll be our where we plan on utilizing the most. They haven't been able to confirm. Upstairs is a smaller location. It's really a couple long hallways with just small offices off to each side. A couple of them just are renting that space and not necessarily utilizing it, so Mr. Reed hasn't been successful in seeing if they're willing to move. When we put an alternative school, our hope is that will provide a little bit of extra oomph to move out of that building. Kind of what our anticipation is, but we do envision some revenue coming in, at least for a little while, because us owning the building.
But all 3 levels, when everything settles, will be
Yes.
utilized for the alternative school type.
Correct.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Oliver?
You mentioned a reno budget. Where do you anticipate that coming from?
That will come from fund balance as well. And that's something we've discussed from the very beginning, pulling that from fund balance with a total cost of 2.5 total. That is the renovation. It should not exceed 1.3. Once our school board just officially agreed to purchase this last Tuesday, so our architect we will now hire to go in and give us ideas of how to make it appropriate. But that'll come back before this body as well.
Any other questions for Dr. Sullivan?
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second from Commissioner Boyd. And I believe we need to call the roll on this.
Commissioner Gooch,
Aye.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Another piece, if that's okay to share.
Please continue.
The last piece I want to do is we don't celebrate in education enough. And so we actually, one of our expectations is when you talk about school accountability, you get grades on achievement and then you get grades on growth. We have a lot of students. Achievement is just what level did students perform at on TCAP in April. Growth is where did they go from one year to the next on TCAP. And so we really focus on growth, especially considering we have so many kids who weren't our students the year before. The state grades you on a level 1 through 5. And so we were a level 5 school district overall, but we are also a level 5 school district for every subject: math, reading, science, social studies. So huge reason to celebrate. And then we had a record number of schools. We had 26 of our 48 schools that reached a level 5. So the work that's being done with all the resources the county commission provides, it's truly impacting students, which is the entire goal. And something that we've tried to really emphasize to our staff is never take for granted the performance of our county. It's something that should be celebrated, especially as we continue to grow, we continue to be high performing. So very proud of the work. Thank you guys for everything as well.
I think that does deserve
Yeah.
Did you say 48? Is that how many we have? 48 schools?
We have 48 schools that actually test. Smyrna West and Daniel McKee test students, but they don't get accountability scores because they're alternative. Yep.
Any other questions for Dr. Sullivan? Chairman
One
Phillips.
follow-up. SROs, are we
Yeah.
staffed, fully staffed there?
We are, if they are not, if we still have openings. So I know some of the ones that were approved last year for our high schools, those additional ones are still going through the training process. And if we have openings, then Sheriff's Department's working with their supervisors to cover. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Do we have a motion to approve the report?
Make a motion to approve the report.
And a second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Report is approved. Moving on to other business, I do have something small tonight, but I'd like to see if any other commissioners have anything to add first. Seeing none of you, just want to make a quick mention of this, and forgive me, I don't want to make a mistake on someone's title, so I'm going to be having to read this from my phone, but several members of this committee, including Chairman Dodd, we had the opportunity to meet with Kristen Swan of the United Way, and it was an informational meeting, and it was quite impactful, to say the least, at the work they're doing. I know Commissioner Oliver actually is involved in some of their programming. We learned about the ALICE program, and I think after tonight, after hearing where we are on the Atlas and where we are on free and reduced lunch, I think all commissioners see where we're headed with those that are going to need assistance. And one of the things is, how do we direct people to get that assistance? You know, people need to know where to go when they need something, and we learned about United Way's, the ALICE program was one of the things, which is the asset limited, income constrained employed. And that group of people in our county is growing, and that's those that are basically right at the edge of affordability, of being able to sustain. And one of our conversations is, most people could be in a position to be one paycheck away from housing or food insecurity. And talking with Director Cumby, I can't imagine a more appropriate subject that is between health and education than discussing what's happening with food insecurity, housing, and these types of issues. So we were discussing the possibility of having her come produce a report for the committee and just give a status update on Rutherford County and where we sit on those numbers. And I thought it was an excellent meeting to get real data on what we're looking at, because we're in this together from a health department, we're in this with the county commission, we're in this with the Board of Education. The amount of students that we're feeding, that's a big deal through our school system. So we're doing more than education, and folks need to understand we're very involved in taking care of our community, so we want to continue getting that information out the best we can. So I just wanted to thank Kristen Swan for that time, and look forward to the committee being able to hear some of that report. So, are there any other comments or any other business tonight? Yes, Chairman Phillips.
I have one thing. This time last year, a concern was the makeup of this committee. Committee, as it existed year before, a number of commissioners did not return or were not reelected. So the makeup of this committee was a concern. That concern proved to be ill-advised. This committee has got 5 new members, 5 new commissioners, but have got up to speed in a record-breaking, breathtaking clip. So I just would like to commend this eyes on the task and doing your job and doing it very what you've accomplished this past year. And look, I wanted to say some of those concerns probably well-founded as it coming on to spend 77 to 78% of our guys have not only been up to the task, but have performed at high level. Proud of you and your performance.
Mr. Chair, I would have to echo that. I would have to agree. That was one of the thoughts that we had in looking at our committee structure with health and ed. And I think that this committee has proven to be outstanding, and I think for one reason, among other reasons, is that the love of education in our children from the members. And we got a good bench as far as leadership, and even Commissioner Oliver has done a good job, I would have to say. So we'd like to commend everything. And thank you for mentioning that, Chairman Phillips.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Oliver, would you like rebuttal?
I would just like to say thank you.
Yes, and Chairman Phillips, thank you, and Chairman Pro Tem Gooch, thank you guys very much, and I'm very proud. I'm really excited about where we're going in this committee, and I'm excited that we are taking it as far as we can, because everyone does care, and I appreciate it. And this full commission actually cares as well, and I think you'll start seeing that as we have more time together. We're going to continue to do things that are going to help the people of Rutherford County. So, and I'm honored to do it with all of you. So. Any other business to come before the committee tonight? All right, we're adjourned.